Fasting practice. Used by mystics, monks, nuns, lamas, holy humans, in other words. In religions, Muslim, and in certain Buddhist practices, lineages. Now, fasting, unfortunately used by addicts, causes confusion and more hallucinations to stimulate their mind, overloading their thoughts for them to have freedom, where there's workers going to Amazon and Facebook and Google downtown, and medical school applicants doing application material now. Often what these humans will do who use fasting for recreational, psychological psychiatry, in their system and processes called folks, language about, this, that, them, it, there, and their body language and gesture and posture they call another form of communication used as dominance. Now, there's a big distraction talking too much about these decisions and these problems an object in outer space have called Earth with climate change now. And especially now with the coronavirus pandemic and no economics, not only while there's nowhere to work open for business, but to plan for and have motivation for and be inspired after a vaccine cures, eliminates, and destroys a pathogen. Made worse with graffitied walls everywhere, tents in parks where walks would help with side effects caused by quarantine, feces and needles where there aren't large piles of trash and humans staring and observing. Broken windows, and those folks and people who use their fasting as a weapon of mass destruction and duality. With the distraction of fists raised and clothing required to be said aloud, to pass without violence and harassment and assault. There's a practice in the memory of my brain from a Tibetan Buddhist shop called Pema Karpo in Greenwood in Seattle, Washington State. At Pema Karpo, when we didn't have food in a small refrigerator, when I apprenticed with a shaman named Rigzin Tinke, and there wasn't income from Buddhist statues and thangkas and shrine ritual items for sale, and in the most extreme circumstances, when we couldn't eat enough sheep fat from Rigzin's family in Tibet, dried in a bone broth with egg and other ingredients, we'd forget about the suffering of not eating. We'd ignore the distraction and confusion and misdirection caused by the drug dealers who often harassed us in the shop where we sold Tibetan Buddhist, Nepali, handmade, artisan items for sale. And when there wasn't a Chinese military man with his ring on his finger who demanded money and respect for his dominance, there was African American black men who now are called a race, who often we had to call the police to have removed when we didn't want our awareness charged a fee. A required gift to have our attention and our concentration and our focus on pricing, dusting, and meditating. Now, spiritual fasting, much different than some creepy, scary man kicking on a door, reminding a tenant their awareness has dominance, and the sound they hear, they observe, needs modification now. Within these memories, these obvious descriptions of a time called now, there's certain necessities whenever a human practices fasting who aren't in the military armed with guns and Apache helicopters and B-2 stealth bombers with nuclear weapons. Such as a safe home with a good lock on a door. At Pema Karpo, a good incense by the entrance and a curtain to protect us from the thug gangster mafia cartel of Greenwood. in Seattle, Washington. Now, ethnic indications of a dialect called Tashi Dalic. Stickers of Buddha and a lotus flower, and when all else failed, a very large knife in a cabinet, and two men who would defend a sacred holy site I thought of as a castle, and Rigson called his shop. And so after a door has been secured, earplugs have been located in case whispers and voices are too scary and emotional. And too similar to a memory of a social worker counselor who disappeared, and a woman, gender-neutral human, who suffers. Heat, warmth during a cold winter, a radiator heater at Pema Carpo from a wall device we can no longer turn on. Water, both in Seattle, Washington state with earthquakes from a sink, and also as emergency rations in case there's a shake, a boom, a rattle, and a bang. Now, and when all of the parts and all of the necessities for fasting have been completed, there's a beginning with an eventual end involving energy consumption. Now, a final part and necessary consciousness to have a body and a brain, and not only a head and skull with a thought and mind and ego and self and emotion and requirement now called behavior. And then, lastly, to conclude, a fasting begins. And from what yogis and monks have said and nuns have written about, and teachers have taught in spiritual traditions all over the world, there's a heightened awareness, an increased speed of the body, and a tenacity and grit of a brain using fat already beneath skin and energy available from a breath in, a breath out, and a heart beat, and a heartbeat, and a heartbeat, and a neuron and a synapse and another and another and another, and Om Mani Padme Hum. Now